Hey guys, welcome to Draw Near Moment. My name is Titus. It's that moment of the week where we draw near to Christ together. Let's talk about one of the weirdest stories in the Bible. Let's get to it. Well guys, it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas around here. My wife has done an incredible job making her house look amazing for Christmas, and now you guys get to enjoy it on the set. So anyway, I'm not quite ready to talk about Christmas just yet, even though it looks really Christmassy. So come back next week, or it might even be another week after that where I actually start talking about it. But let's talk about the strangest story I've ever seen in the Bible. This is a story that really messed me up when I was growing up. I read it, I just didn't know what to make of it. I was like, what does this mean? And it's actually a parable. Jesus is using a parable in this story. Now, if you don't know what a parable is, it's basically a made-up story to make a point. So didn't really happen. All the details don't really matter, but it's really made for a specific point. Now, Jesus is telling the story to his disciples to just illustrate an idea. Now, I didn't understand the idea at the time, but as I've kind of grown up and read it, it's not a story you hear very often either. But it's a really cool one, so let's check it out. It's in Luke 16, starting in verse 1. Now this is Jesus talking against a parable, and one other key thing about parables is they don't often go the way you think they will. So if you think it's going one way, just get ready to be disappointed. So anyway, it says in Luke 16, Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm too ashamed to beg. Now this is kind of interesting. So basically, there's a manager, and there is his master or whatever. He's the guy who owns the whole thing, and he's put this guy in charge of all of his possessions, all of his stuff. And basically, the manager apparently wasn't doing a good job, or someone accused him of not doing a good job, so he's about to lose his job. But this is important, because the manager wasn't fired yet. He says, I'm going to take away your job. So he's got a little bit of time, and he's got a little bit of leverage. So let's see what he does with it. And this is pretty crazy. And really, it honestly seems wrong in my mind, but let's just jump into it. It says in verse 4, I know what I'll do when I lose my job here, and people will welcome me into their houses. So he's like, so what can he do to get people to like him after this? So let's take a look at what he does. So he called in one of his master's debtors, and he asked them the first, how much do you owe my master? He says, 900 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Keyword quickly, let's make this fast, come on. And make it 450. Now, basically, he's calling up all the people that owe his master money. He's like, I got the power. I can do this right now if I want to. I'm going to cut their bills. So basically, it's kind of like if your credit card company said, hey, how much do you guys owe us? And listen, he just called them up. And they just called you out of the blue. How much do you guys owe us? Yeah, let's just cut that in half. You'd be kind of a little bit happy. You might even like that person. What's your name? Let's have dinner sometime. Whatever. And that's basically what this guy is doing in this moment. And he asked the second, how much do you owe? He says, 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. Now this is the key when it comes up here, the next part. This is where it takes a turn where you don't think. Because you think when the master finds out, he's going to be ticked. He's going to be like, you have to pay back all that money, how dare you, all that stuff. But that's not what happens. Let's check it out. It says, the master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. And Jesus explains it right here, and I'll explain what I believe he's meaning by this. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, that when it's gone, you will be welcomed in eternal blessings. Now, you might be a little messed up like I was. What the heck does that mean? So let me explain it with a story that happened to me recently. Me and my wife went to go see the new Hunger Games pretty recently. It's actually the Mockingjay Part 1 if you're watching this in the near future. But anyway, we're really into that trilogy, but there's one difference between me and my wife. I've actually read all the books. I saw the first movie and I was like, I'm in. Let's read. I want to read this book. And so I went through all of them, a long time ago. And so I know in my mind what's going to happen, but my wife has no idea. Now, if you watch the movie, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but there's this moment that's really, really tense. And I was almost nervous even though I knew what was going to happen. But my wife, she was having a panic attack. She's like, give me your hand. She's like, hold my hand. She's like, what happens? Because she knew I read the book. She's like, wait, are they going to make it? What's going to happen? And I'm like, just watch the movie. I'm almost a little bit jealous of her because she's having this tension and I'm not. But it was kind of cool because she was nervous as heck, and I was cool as a cucumber because I knew what was going to happen. Now, listen, the movie did go a little bit off the rails, but I knew that that moment was so important to the book that I knew it had to come back around, and sure enough, it did. And it came back to the point in the book. And I want to mention this because there's a point I want to make. And the point is simply this. Are you leveraging what you know is coming? Are you leveraging what you have now and what you do now for what is coming? Now, as believers, we know what's coming. We know Jesus is coming back. We know there's a heaven and a hell. Are we leveraging ourselves for that? Are we leveraging the things we have, the time we have for that, knowing what is to come? Now, if you're not a believer, I don't mean to offend you, but us as believers, we believe a lot of things that are going to happen, or and they may come soon, they may come later, but we all know, or at least as believers, we know that there's a heaven in front of us. So what are we doing with that? Are we acting like the manager? He's had that little bit of time, because we have a little bit of time, and he leveraged the little bit of power, the little bit of stuff he had for what was coming. Now let me mention 3 ways that I think, at least I do this poorly sometimes, and maybe you do too. The first one is with stress. Man, I've met people that literally, I'm worried about them because they stress me out. Just watching how stressed they get stresses me out. They get stressed about the littlest things. And I'm like, the Bible, commands you, don't worry. Because we all know that stress does not add an hour to your life. It decreases your life. And here's the thing. We know how the story ends. We know what's ultimately coming. We don't know what's happening next in our story, but in the big story, we know what's coming. We don't have to stress out because we know ultimately everything is going to be made right. How about this one? With people that we know that aren't believers, what are we doing with those? And if you don't know someone who isn't a believer, then maybe you need to stretch your circle a little bit and bring in some people. What kind of conversations are we having with them? Because we know that if they don't believe, when they take their last breath, they are not going to a positive place. What are we doing with that? And listen, I know you can't save anybody, but you can speak into their lives. You can pour seeds on there and give someone else an opportunity somewhere down the line to actually reach this person. What are we doing with that? Because we know at the end of the story, we know where it's going. How about this one? Let's talk about tithing. Let's talk about money. Now, as me being part of the church, I know that about, I think it's 7% of Christians actually tithe. Yet it's a command in the Bible. And I've talked to some of them, and I'm like, I don't get in their face because I'm not a jerk, but I hear them say things like this. I think God understands. We just can't afford it. I think he understands. And I want to say this back to them. I'm like, okay, you believe that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and can do anything. And he loves and cares about you. So if knowing that, I don't think God does understand why you can't trust him with a portion, just a little piece of the pie of your wealth. I don't understand. I don't think he understands that. But it's not even just that. Sometimes we just tithe and we kind of stick to that. Man, I think the Bible calls us, that's par for the course. That's just starting. And then really, I think God has called us to go above the tithes about things that we care about deeply. And are you doing that? Are you taking your wealth and investing it into eternal things, into ministries that make impact, into maybe missions, or maybe some stuff at your church, or maybe there's a downtown co-op kind of thing? Are you investing in that? Because those things matter. Now, as your church manager, we have a little bit of time. What are we doing with it? Are we leveraging what we have now for what we know is to come? Hey guys, this is the moment where I say thank you for joining me for this episode, and I really do mean that. Seriously, you could have done a lot of things with this 10 minutes, but you decided to spend it with me, and I really do appreciate that. I do not take that for granted. So thank you. And also, if you like what you saw, if it was helpful to you, hit that subscribe button down below. And also, I did an episode last week called Do We Believe? It kind of goes along with this a little bit. If you want to check that out, it's last week, and you can just click on my face, and that'll take you to it as well. So, or you can click in the description. But anyway, also leave a comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree, maybe I offended you some way. Let me know. I would love to hear what you have to say. So again, thank you so much for joining me for this episode, and I'll see you next week, or next Wednesday, for another episode. See you then.